All right, guys. Welcome back to our podcast.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another great episode.
That sounded like something you'd say at the end. Anyways, Seamus isn't here today. I'm excited about this topic. We have an interesting topic. We're talking about like worst case scenarios. Things where we're past the point of prevention to avoid a bad situation. Shit has hit the fan. And what are we going to do about it? How do you recover from these things?
Yeah.
So we compiled a list.
Yeah.
Should we run through all of our topics to start and then we'll start going through them in more in depth?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So our list is you get charged by an off-leash dog. Your dog bites someone or another dog. A dog fight. Your dog gets loose and is the off-leash dog. Your dog runs away. And your dog eats something that they shouldn't. Now, all of these things can be prevented.
Yeah.
All of them can be prevented to a certain degree. I would say there's always a level of risk with anything.
Shit happens. People aren't perfect. Mistakes come and go.
Yes. But sometimes these things happen, and whether it's your fault or not your fault, and then you have to figure out how to recover from it. So our first one, charged by an off-leash dog.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
The controversial topic.
Listen, I made an Instagram reel. So we decided we were going to talk about this probably a week ago. And I was like, it kind of came up because I'd had a bunch of clients asking me, like, what do I do if I get charged by an off-leash dog? Because this is something that happens a lot, okay? This is not an infrequent thing, okay? So I was like, you know what? I'll just make an Instagram reel on my dog training Instagram so that my clients can see it. They have all the information there, blah, blah, blah. Now, they only give you 90 seconds, okay? So you gotta smush everything in there as you can. But my basic points were, you need to carry a pet corrector with you, bare minimum. I also mentioned in there that you could carry pepper spray. I didn't go into depth about that. That's an important point for later.
Yeah.
I said that you also need to be very aware of your surroundings when you're walking. If you see a dog that is off leash or not controlled, just go the other way if you can. If you can completely avoid the situation, that's best. And then if the dog sees you and starts coming for you, there's a few key things that you should do and some big key things that you should not do. You should not run away. It's the worst option. You should not, well, I suppose if you can run away in the sense that you can jump in your car or that you can get in the house.
Get somewhere safe.
Or get somewhere safe. Yes, that's probably a better option. But if there's not that available to you, you need to stand your ground because as soon as you run, best case scenario, you're triggering curiosity in the dog to keep chasing you. Worst case scenario, you're triggering prey drive and the dog is now just bing. When the dog gets to you, I saw a lot of videos of like people walking backwards, leaving their dog in front of them, able to engage with the off-leash dog, and they just keep going and they're just walking backwards, being useless. You need to put yourself, your dog behind you, and as the dog is coming towards you, you need to yell at it. A lot of times I'll just yelling, get, like really loud and very firm and stomping as they're coming. That has worked for me so many times because this has happened to me a lot. Spraying a pet corrector, I mentioned that in the video, is very important. And most of the time that's going to deter dogs from being there. It's not your job to worry about that dog. It's not your job. It's not your job to care whether they were traumatized in that event or anything like that. Your only priority is keeping yourself and your own dog safe in that situation. And so I made a reel, a reel about that, and I posted it. And it was very normal for about an hour. And it was just my clients being like, this is so useful, thank you. And then the algorithm took it and it exploded, and it's been like 3 days and it hasn't stopped. and there's some really asinine people in there that have no idea what they're talking about.
No. They're just like some nasty, mean comments.
Really mean comments.
Have nothing to do with the principle of the video, but
no.
I don't know what upset people so much.
Me neither. It's really not that controversial.
No.
I think most of the people who are upset are people that have the off-leash, uncontrolled dogs.
Yeah.
Because they're all people that are like, if you ever did that to my dog, you would be getting pepper sprayed, or you'd be in a hospital, and I'd be in a holding cell for 24 hours. Like they're really getting into it.
Are you threatening me? Like
so many threats.
Yeah, this is where it's gone to.
We've also we immediately hit the "don't trust anyone with blue hair" comments. Those came in right off the bat.
Yep.
Right off the bat. Honestly, though, it's been really funny. It's just been kind of a source of amusement. I think I got like 250 followers from it so far.
Nice. Yeah. Controversy will bring, new people to your page.
Apparently.
A little bit of heat.
Yeah. And the reason why I also mentioned pepper spray is because without hesitation, if there is a dog that is... I'm not saying use pepper spray to just keep a dog away from you, but if a dog started to engage with me aggressively... I'm 100% going to pepper spray without hesitation. Yeah. That's not even a thought in my mind.
So I'm going to do what I need to do to protect myself and my dogs. And it was funny because just last week I was at a park that we frequent, and it was an off-leash. I had my dogs off-leash. I was on the trail, very secluded. And in the far distance, I see two large pit bulls, not on leash. And I knew right away. I said, I need to be prepared. So I picked my Chihuahua up and grabbed my pet corrector, and sure enough, the dogs came charging down the path right toward me. I could tell in the owner's body language that this was it was making them very nervous, likely because they knew that their dogs weren't friendly, or their dogs were capable of starting a fight. So I instantly started blasting my pet corrector, stomping, yelling. In that process, the guys were screaming, "Don't mace my dog. Why are you macing my dog?" And I was like, it's literally air.
And also, like, even if you did, whose fault is it in this situation?
Your dogs came up to me. I was politely on the path, out of the way, and I don't know your dogs. I don't know what they're capable of. I don't know if they're going to hurt me. So I had to use my legs and kick them away, and the guy starts to get in my face, and I was like, "Did you just mace my dog?" And I was like, it literally air, and he's like, "You know what?" And he picks his dog up and he said, "We're leaving." And I said,
Thank God.
No, please. I would love to engage with you and your uncontrollable dog some more.
Yes, absolutely. Sounds great.
And if you have heard me speak before, or you know me, you know one of my biggest fears is being approached by off-leash dogs, because I have such small dogs.
Yes.
And the risk of them being injured or having a fatal injury from off-leash dogs is very high. Luckily, I felt extremely prepared in that moment, and I felt like I expected the unexpected. I brought my handy-dandy little bag with all of my things that I need in it. Going to that situation, it didn't cause me too much stress or trauma or my dogs, because I was ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, so I've had multiple times where, thankfully, it's been pretty inconsequential because around here in Cleveland, there's a lot of just rogue dogs. Yeah. And so the stomping and the pet correctors tend to work pretty well. They just tuck their tail and run away. In my home setting, I've had a couple interactions with completely out of control dogs. I've had two that were very scary because there were injuries from it. So the first one was a woman was in her car driving down my street looking for her dog that had gotten loose and run away. Nice. And my husband was in our front yard. I was not home. My husband was in our front yard letting my Dutch Shepherd, out to go to the restroom. Now, my Dutch Shepherd had just had TPLO surgery on his ACL literally a week before. So he was still, this is like a $5,000–6,000 surgery, very expensive. And the healing process from it is so particular. Like if you mess up the healing process, the whole surgery was pointless. Yeah. So it's so, so important that, I mean, the dogs are literally on crate rest for 8 weeks afterwards with just potty breaks. Yeah. So Lumos is outside. He's still at a point where he can't even put weight on his leg at all. So he's hobbling around on 3 legs. He's got his cone on. His whole butt is shaved. Still got all of his stitches and stuff like that. And doped up on all of his pain meds and everything too. This woman rolls down her window to ask my husband if he's seen her dog, and her pit bull just jumps straight out of the window. She starts screaming bloody murder, which again, the behavior of the owners is so indicative of how bad the situation is, because she starts screaming bloody murder, knowing her dog is extremely aggressive. The dog comes charging out, and Tom thankfully does what I always propose to people to do, is he puts Lumos behind him, and he's like kicking the crap out of this dog over and over again. And it, you know how pit bulls are, it just keeps coming back and back and back. Not that they're inherently always aggressive. I'm saying that they're like tenacious. Yeah. When they're engaged in that like fight mode, like they want to keep going type of thing. Yeah. So it just keeps coming back and back and back. And again, I don't blame the dog in this situation. I blame the owner, who clearly had zero control over her dog whatsoever. And it finally ducked down underneath after like 30, 40 seconds. This woman is still in her car screaming. She's done nothing. Yeah. Nothing useful at this point. My husband's yelling at her, come get your dog, come get your dog. It darts underneath of him, and he just hears like screaming, whimpering, whining noises. And he's like, oh my God, like it got Lumos, all this kind of stuff, and his leg and everything like that. He looks back, my dog. Now, Lumos, in his own right, he's kind of a badass, but he has his cone on, he's doped up, he's on 3 legs, and he managed to get this thing by the neck. Yeah. And he had it like fully pinned on the ground. And the woman finally gets out of the car. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she like finally gets her dog. And then my husband, he literally looks at her and he goes, I'm sure my wife will come talk to you when she gets home. Because he's like, oh, she's going to be so furious. And I had to call and make sure that like his leg was fine and x-ray it, like all this kind of stuff. Thankfully, he was okay. It didn't mess with his healing process or anything. And so I went and I talked to her, but I told her, I walked down the street, I knocked on her door. Because thankfully, she did like give all of her information. She gave him her phone number, her address, everything. She lived in my neighborhood. I went down, which in her right, that was good of her to do. Yeah. You know, she was trying to take responsibility for the situation. And I talked to her and I said, I will let you know if there's any vet bills, because I'm not paying for those if that were to happen. The other instance, and that to me, so I didn't call the police, I didn't do anything like that, because I felt, even though the situation was absurd, she took responsibility for it. Yeah. She was like, absolutely, whatever you need, I'm so sorry, you know, all this kind of stuff. And since then, I've never even seen that dog. Yeah. Like, she is like very much, I think, learned from that situation and been like, we cannot have that happen anymore. The other situation that I had that I did involve the police in, because I felt it was important, was I was walking in my neighborhood, yet again. My neighborhood is a situation where like I refuse to be nervous to walk my own dogs in my neighborhood. So if you threaten that, then I will fix it. Yeah. By either a civil opportunity of just discussing with you and trying to get on the same page, or I will call the police if I have to. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to be a Karen, but also like people should be able to safely walk in their neighborhood without getting bit by your dog, which is what happened. So like we were walking, this man just opens his front door, doesn't look out, doesn't see if anybody's out there, nothing. His dogs come flying out of the house. One's wearing an invisible fence collar, one is not, because it was an older dog. he's like, oh, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. And so we just keep walking. We're on the opposite side of the road. This dog, not fine, bolts straight out of their yard, comes over, beelines it right for Snoop, my Chihuahua, which was right next to Lumos. Lumos, basically the dog, like Lumos, like darted in front. It was just a mess. It was a mess. The dog started a fight, basically, with Lumos. Bit my husband in the process. He had like 4 puncture holes on his hand. His whole hand was bruised and everything. The guy, again, useless. Standing still in his yard, just like, oh, what's going on? I had to grab his dog by its collar and choke it out and pull it, and I drug it back all the way over, and I gave it to the guy. As I'm going over there to check on my dogs, he runs in his house and just disappears and slams the door. And then I look at Tom, and through all this, Tom is just like, the dog just bit me. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And I'm looking at that. And so before he can even stop me, I marched right up onto their front porch and I'm banging on their front door. And Tom's just standing there like, oh no. And like, the wife opens the door. Okay. The husband is nowhere to be found.
Typical.
Yeah. And I said, your dog just attacked my dogs and bit my husband. Mm-hmm. And she goes, well, what do you want us to do about it? That was her immediate response. And I said, are you kidding me right now? She goes, that's never happened before. He's never done that. They have an invisible fence. I said, your dog wasn't wearing the invisible fence collar. I literally had to pull it off of my dogs and drag it over there. It wasn't wearing it. She's like, well, because he doesn't need it anymore. And I said,
clearly he does.
I'm sorry, what? And then the husband comes out. He starts screaming at me. So then Tom's like, excuse me. So then he starts screaming at him. And I was like, your dog just ran out of your yard, attacked us, caused physical harm. Mm-hmm. You haven't even once asked if we're okay. Yeah. You haven't asked anything. I said, you're immediately getting defensive. So we walked away. I called the police. And I had them write a ticket for everything. And basically just solved it that way. Because I was like, if you're not going to allow us to do this civilly, if I had walked up there, first of all, him just disappearing into the house and not coming back out, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like if I had walked up there and you answered the door and you were like, I am so sorry. Yeah. Is everybody okay? What do I need to do? Like anything. Like that's just insane to me that you're just going to immediately get defensive as if you didn't just cause that whole situation.
And you don't know if that dog is up to date on its rabies shot.
Yeah.
It's kind of your responsibility if you're in an incident like that to report it or speak with the owners. Mm-hmm. And if you don't and you're like, I'm just going to be cool, I'm going to let everything go, you're maybe having that problem be with a child next time or with an elderly person that can't handle themselves in the same manner. Mm-hmm. And you're essentially turning your back on a really dangerous situation.
100%.
So it's not like you're being a snitch if those incidences do happen. I think it's really essential to be able to navigate that and call who you need to call. Mm-hmm. And in your case, you had to call the police.
Yeah, it's like, and I even, when the police came out to our house for the report, I said, listen, I'm not trying to like be an asshole. Yeah. This is the last thing I would want to involve the police in. Yeah. I was like, but they refused to be civil about it and to take any responsibility. And so I guess I will force them to take responsibility, at least monetarily at this point. And now the dog has a record. Yeah. You know, which sucks because it wasn't the dog's fault necessarily, but also like people just don't want to take responsibility for that stuff.
People like, a lot of people want to be like, look at the situation and be empathetic and be like, oh, it's just a mistake. Like, but we can't afford to allow these mistakes to go on, especially in your neighborhood where you're probably walking by that house almost every day or the route you take. Yep. You just, you can't take risks like that.
No. And I guess like, so those are the ways that we deal with if we're getting charged by an off-leash dog. But I guess we kind of incidentally also talked about how you should handle it if you're the one whose dog did that. Yeah. First of all, you are not in a position to be defensive whatsoever. You cannot be defensive. You have to take responsibility. You need to be empathetic. You need to be compassionate. You need to understand that, like, that is a scary situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's very scary. There are some people that are very scared of dogs, don't like dogs. There are some people that maybe have already had a bad experience. Like on the post that I made, I'm getting flooded with comments of people just venting about them getting like mauled when they were out walking one day and this dog came out of nowhere and now I have permanent damage in my arm, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just very sad. And if that happens to you and it's your dog who did that, like, you cannot be the one who has any right to be upset about how that other person handles it. I did get one funny comment that was like, if my dog got off leash and charged someone, I would fully expect them to kick it in the face.
Yeah, and as you should, like, you have to be able to be realistic in situations and be like, what happened? Do I have a right to be angry? And like, if the person is simply trying to defend themselves, no, you absolutely don't have a right to be angry of a person trying to defend themselves or their dog.
Absolutely not. And again, like, just because your dog is nice and is approaching somebody and you know that they don't have malicious intent, you don't know the dog that they're with. So, like, another story I have with one of my clients, he has a very, very reactive Australian cattle dog. And we finally hit, I mean, this man has gone through multiple trainers, just really struggled with this dog for a really long time. We finally hit like 3 weeks where the dog had 0 reactions.
Nice.
Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And we're at Edgewater. Dog is doing fantastic. It was super busy, dogs everywhere. He's killing it. And all of a sudden, I see from across the field this like fluffy, look probably like a Samoyed, I think, or something like that. And the dog's just like rogue, just zipping around. Those things are fast. It's going crazy. And of course, I see it as it goes bing, and it looks at us, and I was like, oh no, and it just starts booking it, right? And I was like, this is not gonna mess up all of my dog's progress at this point with my client. So I told him, I said, you just stay right here. I said, keep walking and trying to get to the vehicles. I said, because we're just gonna try to get out of this situation. And I looked like a crazy woman. I said, I'm gonna intercept this dog. So I had my pet corrector, and as soon as the dog was like flying over, I was yelling at it, I stomped at it, and I sprayed the pet corrector, and even from like 5-10 feet away, that dog was like, see ya, and just took off the other direction, which, thank you, goodbye, thank you so much. And in that instance, it was like, that dog was probably super friendly. Everything about its body language looked very friendly. It had no malicious intent, but the dog I was with was not. You know, he didn't want to be charged by that dog, and if he had, that would have proved all of his previous thoughts right, of like, I hate being around dogs because I'd never feel safe. You know, so that could have easily just set back like all of the progress and the success that we made. And I was not allowed to let that happen. And then the woman had the nerve to be like, now I'll never catch my dog.
Be like, maybe your dog shouldn't be off leash to begin with.
Be like, why was it off leash if you couldn't catch it?
I think it's also, if we have people out there listening to this, you should never be in a position where you're testing to see what happens if your dog is off leash. You're going to be like, let's just see what he does. Let's unclip the leash. What's the worst that could happen?
A lot.
Unless you've practiced your recall in multiple situations and you have that level of trust in your dog, do not unclip your leash. It's not your time to test things out. That's how a lot of accidents happen. That's how dogs run into the street. That's how dog fights happen. So unless you can guarantee that your dog is very well off-leash trained, don't worry about it.
Don't do it. And again, equipment fails. I get that, but I think we talked about that previously. Like, if your dog is not off-leash reliable, your equipment can't fail. So you need to make sure you're investing in quality products, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I had an incident where I was the one with the off-leash dog that charged another dog. And I was young at the time. I probably told this story 1,000 times on the podcast even. But I had a very
I don't think from this perspective, though.
Yeah.
Of everything that went into it.
I don't think so. But I had a very reactive Chihuahua, and I know that seems like funny that it's a reactive Chihuahua, but this dog's reactivity, like he would try to fight other dogs. And not in like a funny way, like he's like out for blood. Mm-hmm. And he slipped his harness and kind of like slipped right out of it. And before I knew it, he was charging this dog. The lady stood in front of her dog and she said, no, my dog's not friendly. No, my dog's going to attack your dog. And at that point, I had no control over my dog. So I was running and this is not funny, but it's kind of, I just like remember.
Dark humor.
Sorry, Mom. Distinctly remember my dog up in the air and head down. And I just like can picture it. And he was like falling to the ground because this dog had just grabbed him and tossed him up in the air.
Yeah.
And it was like all very slow motion.
Yeah.
And I ran over and the dog continued to get on top of my dog and start attacking him. And I had to like straddle the dog and like unlock its jaws to get my dog free. And all of that adrenaline from saving my dog and me being at fault for it, I was like really unkind to the other owner. And now that I'm older and I have more perspective, I can be like, damn, that I was not the victim in that situation.
Yeah.
I was the one with the unruly dog. And I was really, really unkind. And I still kind of feel bad about that to this day. But it's...
Maybe she'll watch this.
Yeah. Sorry, lady in the park. My bee. And we both walked away and we're like in a huff. And I just was like, how dare she have a dog that's aggressive?
Yeah.
And aggressive dogs are allowed to go enjoy the outdoors. Aggressive dogs are allowed to go on walks.
Yep.
If it's managed properly, then and the owner's doing everything and being responsible. So that being said, like I definitely knew that I was in the wrong now. Yeah. And if I had gone back in the situation or something like that happened again, I would want to be able to take full responsibility.
Yeah. I think maybe the only adjustment that if she was my client with a dog like that and she 100% knew that her dog would instantly attack a dog if it approached, then I would say it would need to wear a muzzle if it was out and about.
Yeah.
Like I have a client with Willa. The little tiny pitty thing. Yeah. She's similar in that if she gets charged by an off-leash dog, like she will instantly go into attack mode. And so she just walks her in a muzzle now. Yeah. And because she just feels more comfortable doing that. So there's definitely certain things to be said about that. Not to say that obviously you weren't at majority of fault in that situation. That's something that owning an aggressive dog that has that propensity to it, and you know without a doubt, if worst case scenario that happens, that would be your dog's response, then it's probably more responsible to have it in a muzzle.
Yeah, it's good to and that's a good point for our topic is like expect the unexpected. And if you're owning a dog that has it has the caliber to be able to attack dogs for really simple things, although they could feel threatened, you might need to get ahead of it and put the muzzle on.
Should we do dog fights?
Yeah.
Yeah?
A dog fight, yeah.
Okay. To me, there's it depends on how the dogs are fighting. So I think that it's easy to panic when a dog fight happens, but it's important to kind of take a moment and just look at what's happening and figure out what's going on.
For a split second.
Yes. Pause, see what's happening. If the dogs are not latched and engaged and it's just a lot of like this going on, then you can easily you can separate them relatively easily. That's a situation where if you have multiple people, you can each just grab one dog. You want to avoid going in where the top half of the dog is because it's likely that you'll get collateral damage because they're just flailing around at that point. So usually you can just grab the hind ends of them and kind of pull them away. If you're by yourself and that happens, you can put a slip lead or a leash tied around the hind corners of one dog, drag that over to something to secure it, and then grab the other dog and separate them that way. So that way they're both apart from each other and they can't re-engage.
Yeah.
And I know that seems like, wow, that would take a long time, but trust me, it's better to do it that way than to keep trying to separate dogs that are going to keep re-engaging.
It's because it's so reinforcing to like hold a dog back too.
And then bam, they just go again. Yeah.
If they are latched, one of the only ways to get a dog off is choking them.
Yeah.
With a little bit of leash pressure straight up. Kind of goal is to lift their top paws off of the ground.
Yep.
So sometimes if I am socializing dogs, I'll have 2 drag lines on if I don't.
Yep.
Or I try to leave a drag line on the dog that is newer into the group. If we're going at it about like socializing wise.
Yeah, definitely. It's important that if they are latched, even if it's just one dog that's latched on, that you do not pull them.
Yeah.
Do not pull them because you're going to do infinitely more damage if you rip them apart. So you have to typically, like if it's one dog that is latched, again, you need somebody to secure the dog that is being attacked, and you have to come over top and choke out the other dog and get them off that way.
Yeah. It can be a process too, and I like one thing that I really suggest to have people feel more safe and prepared, aside from having a pet corrector or a mace, is carrying a little lightweight leash in your bag. In this way, if I was ever in a situation, I have a leash. If the dog that is doing the attacking or my dog doesn't have a leash on, I have an extra one. I can wrap it around their neck and utilize the pressure that I need to be able to subdue the situation. Yep,
definitely. That was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
People overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Don't be sticking your fingers in their butts and like
screaming.
Don't be screaming. Paige, you're laughing at me, but people do that.
People do, yeah.
People do that. They stick their fingers in their butts and they like beat them with baseball bats and they're like doing all this dumb shit. Just choke them out. Yeah. It's the safest, easiest way to do it.
Most effective and fast. Like if an animal doesn't have air, they're not going to be able to do the fighting.
Yeah.
And of course, we're not advocating for choking dogs. It's just in a really emergency situation.
Yeah.
If I need to.
Yeah, 100%. What's another one? Your dog runs away. Have you ever had a dog run away?
Yes.
Sunday? Is it Sunday?
No. When I was a teenager, I had a German Shorthair Pointer. And this is just a very traumatic story.
Oh, no.
The timeline of my life. But I was working her in the field, and my mom was walking her dog, and her dog slipped out of the collar, and my dog went running after it. And I knew the second that my dog was running away that she was not going to come back. And I very much loved this dog. It was my entire life. And she ended up being gone for 4 days. In that whole process, and my mom's dog comes trotting back the night of the runaway. He's like, "Hey y'all, I'm back." My dog ended up, it was a big long journey. We put up flyers. It was miserable for my whole family, and she ended up digging under our fence and coming back in through the doggy door. But she, in the process, had a really bad injury to her leg. And this was a dog that I used to show and hunt with and title, and she had permanent damage in her leg, so I could not work her anymore. I could not hunt her anymore. I could not title her anymore because the points would be taken off for her leg.
Yeah.
So it ended up being just a whole situation. So yes, I've had a dog run
So it
away.
sounds like she just came back on her own.
She came back on her own 4 days later. Very worn out, obviously, but when you have a dog that's missing like that, it is awful because you don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's really scary. Flyers seem to be a good idea, right? Yeah. If that were to happen. I know that there's like dogs you can use to track. Like you can hire like tracking dogs that will track dogs sometimes. I don't know how effective that is. Or I can imagine it would be effective. I mean, dogs track pretty much anything. So you do something like that.
Yeah, lost dogs are like there's a whole community now, and there are tracking dogs that are hounds generally.
Yeah.
They can track the scent, but if it's been a couple hours, that scent weakens.
Yeah. There's Facebook groups for certain areas that you can like post info on, and people, because some people like love it. They'll go out and they'll just find these dogs. It's like little detectives.
Yeah. One of like my very best friends, the night of her wedding, she was having somebody care for her dog, and they opened the door, and the dog went running
Oh
right
my
out.
gosh, on her wedding?
The night of their wedding, and they freaking adored this dog. And he was gone for 2 weeks, and they had to go on their honeymoon, and they just both felt sick about it.
Yeah.
And we did flyers. There was Facebook groups. There's, I think, like a website called Lost Dog. And that is a very, very helpful resource to kind of blast it out there. Call in your shelters, things like that. And they ended up getting the dog back. But situations like that times that dogs bolt, it'd be probably interesting to think, like, how, obviously, if we can prevent that.
Sure.
But what happens when you start to see your dog take off?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I had it didn't completely run away, but Snoop actually, when he was younger, he went through kind of like a fear period, you know? And we were on a walk, and I want to say, like, we walked around the block many a time. And for whatever reason, this time, he was like, I want to go back to the house.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here anymore. My stepson had him. And basically what happened was Snoop turned around suddenly and just like bolted. And he didn't have a good handle on the leash, and boom, he just went. And so he starts running down the sidewalk. And they're panicking. My poor stepson is just like crying because he's just like devastated, you know, that it's happening and everything. And I'm like trying to be like, everyone calm down. This is not gonna help. We cannot be chasing after him, all this kind of stuff. So I'm just like briskly trying to walk, you know, to kind of at least keep him in my eyesight as he's like going. And thankfully we were not far from my house, and he literally ran back to the house and then ran and got up on one of my dog cots right outside my porch, and he was like, I'm here.
And you're like, you little shit.
And I was like, and now we're going back on our walk again.
Yeah.
Because we're going to fix that. Yeah. We're not going to do that anymore. And so that was something I really had to work through with him a little bit. But I think the most important thing in that situation for me was like, you can't panic and start chasing the dog.
Yeah. Chasing,
because
that's a good thing.
That is just going to scare them even more.
And if something's being chased biologically, like you're programmed to run.
To run away, yes.
Even if you feel like, oh, my dog will always come back to me because they're so fearful or they're so scared or they love me so much, your dog probably won't come back to you.
Probably won't. And so, if anything, running away from them might be a better option, because you're going to trigger their desire to chase you and want to go to you. Honestly, sometimes too, like people opening car doors.
Yeah.
That's another one, because the dog's like, ooh, car ride.
Yeah.
And they'll just hop right in. I remember I found a stray dog on the street in my neighborhood once. And I had seen like a posting for it, and it was like, oh, a super friendly lab, you know, got out during a thunderstorm or something. It got spooked and like dug under their fence. And I literally just, as I was driving, leaned over and opened my passenger door, and I was like, hey, puppy, hey, Shadow, I think was its name. And it was like, hey, and it just jumped right in my car, and I just drove it home. But yeah, usually dogs are very willing to jump into cars.
It's good to, like, if your dog does end up getting away from you, because it does happen. You're not a horrible person.
Yes.
But getting right away, the more people you have to search and go to different areas.
Yes.
Call all your friends. Call all your family. It will kind of show you who's your real friend and family. Get a little search team going and split up, and that's really effective. Is the more we can kind of cover more ground, the better it is.
Yeah, definitely. I think, let's see, we have the dog biting someone or another dog. I feel like that kind of falls under, like, just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
And like own up to it and be kind and sympathetic. Recognize your fault in the situation. Because the power is in their hands.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Yeah, people.
And if you're being a jerk, you're not going to be any more convincing for them not to do something potentially very devastating to you legally, socially, you know, whatever it might be. So be mindful of that.
There's a lot of lawsuits that can come from you being personally responsible for a dog biting. And if you're mad at the person for no reason, that's just going to make them feel like maybe this person does need to be reported.
Yes, exactly. Last one is your dog eats something they shouldn't.
You know what, guys?
This has happened to me with my dogs.
Yeah, I don't.
Beagle mom probs.
Yeah, Beagle mom probs. And unfortunately, I have a dog that loves chocolate. And of course,
death wish.
Yes, I will keep the chocolate up. But one time we had these like fine little fudges that somebody gave me, and it was a present, and it was wrapped, so I did not know it was chocolate, and it was like sitting under my Christmas tree or something.
Oh no!
And Nelson had just the best.
It's Nelson
time.
That likes the chocolate.
Nelson is a chocolate fiend. He would probably like kill me for a piece
This
of
is the same dog who tried to die by attacking that other dog.
Yeah.
He has a death wish.
Yes, he loves to live on the edge. But in the instances where my dogs have ingested something that they shouldn't, I highly recommend keeping a couple bottles of hydrogen peroxide and knowing the dose of which to give your dog. So maybe when you're going to pick it up, just look at your dog's weight, look at the measurement, keep a nice little syringe on you. And the best way is to kind of go to the back of their throat and administer hydrogen peroxide, and that will induce vomiting. And if you're lucky, like I am, catch it really quick. Nelson was both vomiting and pooping chocolate, and that rid him of his sins.
It's not funny, I'm sorry. Rid him of his sins.
He was cleansed.
He felt like a new man after that.
Yes.
Yeah, he really did.
And as you know, Sunday likes to get into the groom area at work.
Yes.
And she likes to knock over the trash can. And there was a particular time that she did that. She was 9 months pregnant with all of the food that she ingested. Obviously, with that, there's the risk of bloat, even in a small dog.
Yep.
So we did that, and I think for 4 hours, every 15 minutes, she was vomiting.
Yeah.
So.
Yikes. I can think of 4 instances that are all kind of different, and the approaches had to be different because of what was ingested. Yeah. So, like, first one I can think of is my Dutch Shepherd. Somehow at another facility that I worked at, someone decided to leave like a 3-ounce container of motor oil out and accessible. And Lumos got it, chewed it open, and drank all of it. And I was like, oh no. So I called poison control. Yeah. There's like a dog poison control you can call it. It's absurdly expensive. They make you pay like $150 before you can even speak to anyone. And there's no guarantee for how long you're going to be on hold. But it's kind of your only option sometimes. And it's usually cheaper than going straight to an emergency vet. Yeah. Use your best judgment. But I called that, and they told me under no circumstances make him vomit because it would burn his, like potentially burn a hole in his esophagus. Yeah. So they said to feed him a lot of bread so that it would soak it up, hopefully, and it wouldn't damage his intestinal lining. And then I think at my regular vet, it was on a weekend at my regular vet, then they prescribed him like basically those pills that like coat their stomach and for his stomach sensitivities and stuff like that. And then he took those for a little bit. The 2 instances where it was good that I made my dogs vomit, one was, you know those meat packages where they put almost like the bandages underneath to soak up all the blood and the juices and stuff? I threw it away, and my hound Beagle Probs, R.I.P. Barney. He didn't die from this. He died of old age. He lived a great life. But in this moment, as soon as I threw it in and I turned my back for 2 seconds as the cupboard door was like closing, he shoved his head in and he snatched it and he ate like a bandage, like this big, just swallowed it. And so I made him throw it up with hydrogen peroxide. Within 10 minutes, he threw it right back up, which that probably would have killed him, honestly, if he had kept that in there or had to have like a blockage surgery or something. Cash ate a silicone spatula.
Nice.
He chewed it up in a bunch of pieces. I gave him hydrogen peroxide. He threw up all the pieces. And then, what was another one? Oh, this was actually when Lumos had his surgery. You know how Rimadyl tablets are like beef flavored? Yeah. Why would they ever do that, first of all? Terrible. But it's like it's basic, what is it, an NSAID? I think it's like a, you know, whatever, anti-inflammatory, that's what I'm trying to say. It was a whole bottle of those after his surgery, and I took Lumos out for one of his potty breaks. Again, even as a dog trainer, I'm not perfect. I had it like pushed back all the way on the counter. Didn't even think to myself that it would smell good because it smelled like beef and not just like a medicine. And so Cash jumped up, managed to bite into the bottle, break it open, eat all of them in the amount that I was outside for like 3-5 minutes. Really, I think he just wanted attention. He said, oh, you're paying attention to Lumos because he had this surgery? Like, hold my beer. It's my turn to get attention now. So I ended up taking him to the emergency room because I was like, this is like a medication overdose. Like, I don't know if he chewed them and now they're already in his system. I don't know if what's going on. So I just drove him immediately. And of course, it was like 9 p.m. So I drove him there. They ended up pumping his stomach and they gave him a bunch of charcoal and like all this kind of stuff and everything. He shit his pants. He was covered in poop. Like, so it was a whole mess. So those are kind of the main instances I can think of with my own dogs. Dogs eating random shit is just something that like you just have to be so on top of. Dogs are constantly trying to kill themselves, I swear.
And like even I've heard a lot of horror stories of people leave potato chip bags in their trash or on the counter. And it's actually a very common way for dogs to suffocate because they stick their faces in the bag and then they breathe and the bag tightens, and there have been a lot of stories. So as you're moving forward, you have to be really careful with placing things, and all of the instances where my dogs have gotten into things has been a learning lesson for me. And of course, I know where my local emergency vet is. I'm not advocating that people don't go to the vet or call the vet, but having hydrogen peroxide, the faster they can rid themselves of the toxin, the better. So.
As long as you know they're supposed to throw it up. I'd say that's the one key point. If it's
call poison control.
If it's like outside of your normal vet hours, call poison control, see what they tell you to do. Because a lot of times over the phone, they'll be like, give them hydrogen peroxide. And they'll like walk you through the whole thing. If it's during your normal vet hours, call your vet and be like, my dog ate this. I'm going to make him throw it up. Is that okay? And they can tell you like, yes, no. Cash, when he was a little baby puppy, he ate a rack of ribs. Bones and all. Cooked bones are terrible for dogs to eat, like so dangerous. And that was a situation where they were like, we're definitely not making him throw those up because that could be really dangerous. And we just kind of have to like wait and see if they're going to cause any issues. They said, because sometimes my vet at the time said, he's like, the bones honestly will usually just sit in their stomach until the acid eats them away completely and they can like kind of pass through. And thankfully, that's what ended up happening. I think I saw like pieces of them like over the next couple months kind of come out when he was pooping. But yeah, there's definitely certain cases where you want to make sure that you should have them throw it back up, whatever it is, before you do it.
And it's like good to stay calm in that situation too, because it is very upsetting to think that your dog could be injured or getting sick from the things. But like the immediate action is really just gotta. I remember calling poison control and like I was crying, obviously.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, did he eat, you know, like truffles have like little paper.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, at least he ate the paper from the truffles and that will have more fiber. And I was like, he didn't eat the paper. So Nelson had these, like, he'd unwrap them delicately.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
In that instance, they told me to have him throw up. And
well, and he's so small that it's scarier too. It's important to remember that like the size of your dog really affects like the toxicity of whatever they're eating. And with chocolate too, it's really the darker chocolates that are the big problem. Yeah. Milk chocolate really isn't that bad for dogs. Yeah. I mean, I'd say probably if they ate a ton of it.
You don't want to feed it to them by any means, but it is dark chocolate. I think the more cacao, however you say that, it has in it, the more toxins it has for dogs. Yeah. Did we hit all of them?
I think so. Can you think of any other points?
I can't. Yeah, I think we hit all of our points.
I think we did. So yeah, sometimes the bad situations are unavoidable. Yeah. So it's good to know what to do if those situations come up. You don't want to be anxious, but you want to be alert. Yes. You know, and be prepared. Think about if this were to happen. Like anytime I'm on a walk, like I kind of already have a plan of like, if something were to happen, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a group with people, it's important to communicate that too. Like my husband is the designated dog holder and I'm the dog fighter offer. Yeah. if we're out and something were to happen. So it's good to like think, you know, the same way that people come up with like what to do in case of a fire or, you know, stuff like that. It's important to do that kind of stuff with your dogs in those situations, to have good plans set in place and procedures. So that way when it happens, you're not like the people in my stories that are just like, what do I do? And completely useless.
Life can be like super unpredictable sometimes and unexpected things happen. And even if any of the situations do happen, the more prepared you are, like having a little bag full of items, the more confident you're going to be of handling those situations. Mm-hmm. So that's my best advice, is just be prepared. Think about what you're going to do, scope things out on your walk, and just try your best in those situations to remain as calm as you can.
Yes, but don't allow the fear of all of these things or the risks involved with stuff to keep you from doing stuff.
Yeah, that was me for a long time, and I got my dog's coyote vests, and even after the whole incident past week with Pip, I made sure to go immediately back out on a walk to reassure myself and her that walking is safe, and I'm always going to do everything I can to protect her. Yeah. Build her confidence back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's important that we still get out there and do stuff with our dogs, and we don't allow like our anxiety to just keep us from doing things that they would enjoy. Yeah. You know. But yeah. Anyways, if there's other situations that you guys can think of or that you've run into, you can share those, ask questions about other worst case scenarios, things like that, and we could maybe discuss it again if it comes up. But otherwise,
stay safe out there.
Be vigilant. Yeah. Be prepared.